to our conference. Okay, this morning I'd like to introduce our fine folks over here at MABCD. I'm Eric Howell. I'm currently with Housing and Community Service. I'm a neighborhood inspector for Housing and Community Service. This morning we have Chris Slavin. He serves as the Director of Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department. This will be Chris over here. Chris doing Chris work. As a joint Sedgwick County City of Wichita Department, MABCD is directly responsible for building and trade code adoption and enforcement, building plan review, building permitting and inspection, floodplain administration and management, wastewater and domestic well inspection, neighborhood code and nuisance enforcement, zoning enforcement, sign code development and enforcement, contractor licensing and trade professional certification with the City of Wichita and unincorporated Sedgwick County. Chris leads 85 county and city professionals performing these various responsibilities and functions. He has been employed by Sedgwick County since June of 2017. So I'd like to introduce Kaylin Middlecott. Okay. Serves as a neighborhood inspection administrator for the Neighborhood Inspection Division of the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department, also known as MABCD, and has been employed with the city since October 2018. The division is charged with enforcement of all housing and nuisance code within the city of Wichita, including actions to combat neighborhood nuisance conditions, including residential bulk waste and tall grass and weed complaints. Other concerns including condemnation, illegal dumping activities, residential zoning infractions, and inoperable vehicles located on private property. Joining the team as well are Tim Wagner, just met Tim, and Daniel Johnson, as we will allow both of them to introduce themselves. Tim, would you like to come up here? There you go. Now you get to see how I feel.
I'm Tim Wagner. I'm currently interim director of MABCD, interim assistant director, and then I'm also do wastewater and water wells within there and incorporated portions of the county.
Thank you, Tim.
And you're back.
Okay. And then we will have Daniel Johnson, if you wouldn't mind. There you go.
I'm Daniel Johnson. I'm a field inspection supervisor for neighborhood inspection, overseeing our 15 neighborhood inspectors from abatements to housing code, zoning enforcement. So I watch over those inspectors, make sure they're doing their jobs.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. And thank you, Tim. Here are a few housekeeping tips. There will be a photographer and a videographer and photographer recording, taking photos of this session. If you do not want your picture taken, please let me know in the back. And if you have any other needs, I will also be here to assist you in any possible way. Please join me this morning and welcome them to our conference. Sure, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's probably good to get the applause up front. So, hopefully we get a little bit of that at the end too. Appreciate that. Thanks. Can everyone hear all right? If sorry, that lovely allergy time of year gets me just a little bit. But this will probably go away in a second. I'll do my best to project. So as we get started, you heard a little bit about us and I'm going to play off of that a little bit and telling you what we do. But I'd like to start with finding out who you are, who we've got in the room. So, how many landlord property owners do we have here? All right, so a fair number. Now, I didn't make that many copies of the Class D contractor, so remind me when getting that part, you didn't get one with, I might need to get some more copies or shuffle some around. How many of you are tenants? renters. Okay, so a few here in that capacity. Awesome, I guess when I say landlords, property managers, property owners, all kind of goes together. Real estate agents. Okay, so from some realtors represented, that's awesome. Cause we're gonna talk a little bit about some of that, like fire insurance proceeds, house sale, any things we want to hit there, that are important. Do we have any renovators, affectionately known as flippers? In the crowd, some doing both, okay, so with those, all right. So, hopefully that will, with the notes that we have, will hit the items of interest and the things that you've got and work with. Who did I miss? I know we got Kansas Gas represented here, so that's awesome. We got utilities, any other utility representatives? Who else? Have I got someone here that we did not really,
For a builder.
okay, so I appreciate that distinction, right? Yeah, so not just property owners, but also building, developing. You talking infill?
Yes.
Mostly infill development. Did you, have you had any experience with our infill incentive program yet? All right, we'll get to those too. So like I said, I'm hoping, I've got some notes here we'll try to play off of, and we're hoping to keep this pertinent to what you're, looking at and what you need. So, all right, as, we saw, so my team, Tim right now is interim assistant and he's over the building section. So, we don't have our administrative services supervisor here. I'm gonna kind of represent that piece. But we do, as was stated in the intro, we oversee all contractor licensing, all building permits. And, associated with that is the inspections, but so building permits, all those transactions that go through our office. Why does a group like that care? Well, that's because we are revenue based. So the way we are funded is 90% of our department is funded by licensing fees and permit fees. So a lot of the commercial development funds us, as well as that's our biggest funding source, followed by, of course, residential development, followed by trades permitting, followed by contractor licensing. So a lot of, so we have a somewhat unique setup here. Not many jurisdictions have what we do, in that we've got neighborhood inspection, neighborhood enforcement within the building department. So, that allows us to more easily and by agreement with our local development community, utilize a portion of that revenue for neighborhood inspection issues, for neighborhood associated issues. Most of the stuff we're going to talk about today. So the portion of our department that is not funded from building revenue is from the city's general fund. And that's what Kaylin uses for all the real fun stuff. When she and Daniel get into that. So if you're talking tall grass and weeds, you're talking bulky waste, junk and trash on a property, all the way up to a condemned house, some other things, some of the real fun ones that we'll hit as we go through the notes. Such as a house that's burning down, falling on itself into the road with some special needs kids and a daycare situation next door. That was yesterday morning, right? And Kaylin hustled out there shortly after the firefighters called us, which I didn't thank her to because I had to take her city council presentations yesterday. So yeah, Dan was all of those too. So on a few minutes notice, we rolled and I took her notes and ran over to the city council. Luckily, it wasn't too tough stuff and she had good notes. But as she rolled out there, Daniel got out on scene as well. They met a contractor, got a contractor over. Did an on the spot bid. And under our authority to do an emergency condemnation, they verified with me that that was authorized and actually removed the house, if you saw that on the news. So that gets kind of an interesting part of the world, right? Because how is it I can move that fast on something like that? But on something you called and complained about, you're like, it's still just sitting there. So, we'll discuss that. We understand that frustration. We feel and live that frustration ourselves, right? So we'll kind of hit these. And with all of this, what I kind of want to set up with that is I know we said, I think the overview said that we'd go with the department overview and then get straight to a Q&A. I want to kind of start, I want to mix that up a little bit and start pulling some of these topics out as part of our overview and go ahead and if there's questions, some interaction, we can hit those as we go. And then at the end of that, we can go pure Q&A with whatever we missed. So, and that's one reason I want to make sure that we have good viewers in the room. So is everybody all right with that? So we got any big burning questions based on what I've said so far that you want to get out? One clarification on. Okay, so, what did I miss? What did I miss on that? But I should hit it this one. All right. So you keep me straight. A lot of this I'm going to, I guess, well, I'll stir it up and then I'll point. Yeah, that's the way, that's leadership, right? Stir it up and give the hard stuff you're taking. That's right. I'll try not, I won't be too bad, right? I've got a great team, right? So let me take a moment here to tell you. There's processes and with processes and with government regulations and with trying to make sure that you follow all the regulations out there. There's slowdowns, there's frustrations, and there's mistakes. We make mistakes. But I've got a great team. Our motto is always do the right thing, right? So we try really hard to do the right thing and do what's right. I've had an interesting week and a half, if you will, especially an interesting start to this week, as has my team here with the media, because there's a lot of stuff in the media right now about in regard to apartments, about houses burning, about different things like that. So I've had a lot of chance to discuss with that there. And yes, as I was talking with my comm team a little bit last night, and I was reminding them that they have the advantage of picking the side of this they want to discuss right now, right? My team and I have the disadvantage, if you will, of knowing how complex these issues are. We know how easy it is to break something over here while you're trying to fix something over here. How lives get affected, even when the decision is to try to do the right thing and try to fix something, right? So if I sweep in and say, yep, you're right, I see ugly pictures of an apartment building, it's uninhabitable. Well, you got a lot of people all of a sudden without a house. That may not be what they want, right? So these are very complicated issues. And we do try very hard. We work very hard to try to just do the right thing. And it is not always easy. So this is one reason that this is great, because anytime we have these forums, we hear and see things that really help us out. Yeah, not to get too deep into that. I probably already have, but not get too deep into that. With some of the ones we've seen lately, we know the reporters, right? The same folks kind of report on this stuff, and they kind of pull us aside. Usually it's us saying, okay, hey, off the record, I can tell you this. They actually pulled us off the side and said, hey, off the record, what we just saw at this place was really bad. It's like, we see these, we report on these, we know kind of how this works between us and you and what we saw going on. And that's helpful for us, right? Caitlin said, hey, I really appreciate that. That is something that is very helpful information. We know to act on that. So I say that to mention that I hope you will feel like this is worth your time. And I hope you realize that it goes both ways, right? We hope to be very informative from our side, but we always learn and take back things from these sessions that help us do a better job of meeting the public need. So, all right, I will get off that soapbox and move on. My next note is we wanted to make sure that we plug the landlord tenant law session. For those who might be interested in that, Jonathan Rupp is doing that one, right? Did I see? One of our prosecutors is doing that.
No, it's
Oh.
Nate Johnson. Nate
Okay,
Johnson.
yeah, Nate Johnson, that's right. So one of the city prosecutors is running that, Nate Johnson. We want to keep this kind of to the property issues. There may be some landlord tenant kind of rights and things that we touch on here, but we want to mainly kind of focus on property issues, and then any of those landlord tenant things, I think Nate's session should be very good at covering those, and Kayleen and I plan to go down and attend that afterwards. So I guess I can't go too late. And maybe I should have asked that question since we got a late start. Is the schedule being shifted, or do we just need to try to hustle and,
That's a good question. I think I'd probably stay on task.
okay, so try to get back on the timeline? Yeah. But anyway, all right, so there's the plug for that. I mentioned a little bit ago the infill incentive program. If you saw this brochure in the back, how many of you had heard of this before I just said it, or before you saw this? Okay, so a few, but not too many. We have actually had quite a few people taking advantage of this so far. So very simply put, that the back of this shows what our planning department considers the formative areas of our ECA, or our established central area of the city. So formative means in decline, right? Means it's old, it's in decline, it's causing concern. So we try to look at that as an opportunity, of course. And the infill incentive says that if anyone gets a permit for anything, MABCD related permit in that area, and the website that is listed here will let you punch in an address and tell you if it's in that area. If you come in to get a permit, having no idea this program exists, my permit writers will punch in your address, and the system will flag that that address is under this program, and your permit is zero cost. So now that's your MABCD permits. If there's a public works permit involved, we have not gotten to the point of being able to waive those fees yet. I know Gary Jansen, the new public works director, is looking at that, but seeing if he can add that piece. But for the MABCD portion of your fees, those are waived. This is designed to try to incentivize any type of residential, and this impacts residences. This is not, if you're coming in to get I should have said that better, because if you're coming in to get a permit to build a McDonald's or something, still gotta pay for that, right? So this does not impact business, retail, that, but if it provides a residence, then, and is considered a residential permit, then that permit with us is no cost for the time being. For commercial, multifamily, development and, redevelopment or renovation, there are some, program accesses that they have. They can get a certain amount of, they get up to $10,000 of their fees waived. That was a big number, but, so that is out there as well. If you are working in infill lots, that does require some prep. This program will also offer up to $5,000 in landfill reimbursement at the city's construction and debris landfill. So that is something to be aware of too. So that is one we definitely wanted to tout and to get out there. I have like 500 brochures, probably not quite that many, but it's a big stack. I got a bunch of these back there. So if you want to take them and hand them out if you want to take a stack and hand out at organizations, friends and family, whoever you think may benefit from that, please do so, because we're doing our best to get this word out. So far, we're at about, I think I'm getting close to 800 total permits, and we've waived close to $100,000 in fees so far. So we're happy to be in a position to do that. The industry has been strong, revenue has been good, so I'm actually discounting some of our fees and looking for areas to provide waivers. The other place right now that we're providing fee waivers based on that is nonprofit organizations that are developing houses. So Mennonite, our CDC, Habitat for Humanity, right now most of them develop in the formative areas, but regardless of where they develop, we're also waiving those fees at the moment. Man, question? Jeff, question, okay. Yeah, answer it. Yes, ma'am.
There, and it's in this area. Some of those homes, there's homes over there that are old pad homes. And are those some of those homes that you are talking about right now, that where someone could go in and redevelop the families under certain?
Yes, now, so that, and that's gonna get interesting. Some of those have housing department involvement. And the housing department, don't make tell a lie here. Sally Stang and Housing Department, they're looking at actually selling some of the city-owned houses. There's some, they just got permission from city council yesterday on some of that to do some, renovation and redevelopment of some of those properties. So there's some shifting there, but yes, anything associated with those. So if you were to go buy one of those, right, you would be,
And that's the main reason why I'm here is I have several ideas as a matter of fact. I am tired of living in apartments. The landlords aren't doing what they need to do.
there you go.
I'm
Yeah.
too old for this.
Yeah, I hear you, ma'am, and that would, yes, so your MABCD related fees would be waived. So if a homeowner comes to get a permit, that's the same too, so that includes if you're doing a new roof, siding, water heater, anything like that. Yes, ma'am.
Is this until the program is out of funds or the expiration?
Great question. Right now is a 2-year pilot that started in October of 22. So we'll go to October of 24. And then it will be to the city council to decide whether to renew as is. What I will tell you, again, this is unofficial, but currently, and the numbers that we're running now, granted, this assumes the industry stays strong and revenue stays good. But if things stay on track as they are now, we're looking to expand it at some point along the pilot or at the end of the pilot, to expand the level of discounts and expand the area. So that's our hope. But yeah, for right now, it will run until October of 24. All right, next, and I'll try to be quick with this one. I know Kevin is a Class D contractor. Is there anyone else here who's a Class D contractor? Oh, so we do have a few. Excellent. So if you need this letter and didn't get it, let us know. Either someone else who's like, yeah, that's not gonna be me, could maybe hand you one, or I'll go make some more copies. I didn't think we would have too many property owners here, so I didn't make as many copies of that as the rest. But all this is really, the main point of my little handout here was to give you our webpage reference. But you know, you can't put a piece of paper with just that on it, right? So I went ahead and copied some of our building code info there that covers the responsibilities of the contractor. So we do have a clause in our code that says if you are a property owner, you're a landlord, either you as the owner and or your property manager can, then you have to meet the criteria, but you can meet that criteria, $360 fee, so it's not cheap, but it's not insane. And you can become a contractor, Class D contractor. That means you can do work on your own property. So in general, by code, if it's a commercial operation, it requires a licensed contractor. That is for public safety, right? We can have a discussion on that, and hopefully it's pretty understandable to all that. Even though we know there's kind of some gray area there, we don't want to make it too tough on property owners to fix up stuff. But on the other hand, you gotta be careful that tenants are, we want another set of eyes on things that tenants are gonna live in, right? So, this would allow you to do general contractor type work, not trades. So you can't do electrical, plumbing, or mechanical necessarily under this, but you can still be the general contractor for, say, a remodel permit, which would probably be quite a bit of savings. But in this way too, if you're gonna re-roof, you're gonna re-side, you're gonna do all that, as long as you've got the skill and the capability and you can pass our inspections, you can be your own contractor to, again, further incentivize keeping those properties up to date, keeping them maintained. And always, obviously, our hope is that works out to make your property management business profitable. And some of that savings make allowing for more affordable housing with those who rent from you. Yes, ma'am.
Is that 360 one time?
So Eric, that renews, thank you, great question. Contractor licenses you renew every 2 years.
Okay.
So once you get it, it's good for 2 years. And yes, it does have to be renewed. Yeah, don't you say, Kevin, you've had yours for like 25 years?
Longer than that, I think it's back in 1979.
Oh, just a couple years longer.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, I won't tell you where I was in 79. Around about fifth grade. There you go, sorry, no, I didn't tell you, I said it wasn't, then I did, yeah. See, they're the ones trying to keep an eye on me, but they're behind me. So I can't, all I can do is guess the looks that I'm getting, right? All right, I need to get on that. So next one I've got is insurance proceeds. And I want Kaylin to talk mainly about this one. Insurance proceeds, what I'll do is define it. Insurance proceeds come to play when your house is damaged. So, if you own a property and, which is insured, 75% or more damage done to that property by state law, 15% of whatever your insurance company pays out is gonna come to me. Now there's city rules that are different from county rules. We're mainly gonna talk city here, so if you got any county properties with a specific question, let me know. But by city rules then, Kaylin is gonna have your name in her folder, and she's gonna start a case on your property, and she's gonna keep track of that. And the purpose of that 15% is to ensure that that property is made safe. And that if it is not made safe or corrected, that we don't have to burden the taxpayers when we go in to make it safe, or at least as much. So Kaylin is going to hang on to your money until we have something else, right? If I've got an engineer's report and a building permit and maybe an initial inspection on that building permit, Kaylin's pretty confident at that point, we've got something else to hold you accountable and responsible to finish that job. She's gonna release you cash. The one I will steal her thunder on, if you sell your property, that's not making it safe, right? And we've seen that is an increasing trend that we've seen a lot. People come to us and say, okay, I sold it, can I have my money back? No, you may not, because it's still not safe. So if the person you sold it to makes it safe and comes through on the permit and all that, we will then release the funds to you. But just selling a property doesn't get you out of that. So what we recommend there is if you're going to sell a property, insurance proceeds are still at play and you have not yet done the work, you're gonna hand that off to someone else, include that as part of your sale. Include that X amount of money is still on the table, still being held by the city of Wichita, MABCD, that will be released upon this and upsell the property by that amount. Because again, and that goes both ways too, if you buy a property that is fire damaged, for example, and you fix it up, and then come and say, hey, the previous owner had insurance proceeds at play, and I'm the one that fixed it up, I get that money, we're gonna say, no, you don't. Sorry. It still goes to the property owner. They're the ones that got the insurance proceeds. So it is the responsibility of those parties to make that transaction at the time of any sale. Ma'am.
Yep. Couple of things on that. So Chris is nicer than I am. Let's just get that right. So,
She's nice.
No, I'm not. So,
Not as nice.
so you guys may find yourselves in the situation of you may deal with the property that has had a fire, or you may be wanting to purchase a property that's had a fire, okay? Just know that if you do that, we are going to look at those properties from a building perspective, where there's gonna be more scrutiny on those than just one that's dilapidated and in disrepair, right? Fires are insidious, they do damage sometimes that you don't realize that they have, they can compound damage that's already there. So if you purchase, I'm gonna just go from that angle, if you purchase a fire damaged property, just know that Tim and his group we're gonna ask them to do a special inspection. We're gonna determine if there are structural needs that would require a structural engineer's report to be submitted at the time a building permit is applied for. We're gonna look and see if a wrecking permit is what needs to happen on that. And all of those are viable outcomes, right? You can do whatever you want to do with those properties. Just know that we're gonna be right beside you while you do that. You've seen in the news, this is not new news, that fires in vacant properties are on the rise. How many of you oversee, manage, or are near a property that's vacant? Anybody? Yeah. So I'm gonna use this as an opportunity to talk about that just a bit. So if you have a vacant property near you and it's unsecured, let us know so that we can do a forced board up on it. right? That's Daniel's area. He's the one that's going to make sure that we have a legal process in place to do that, and we will go physically board it up. If you have a vacant property that you're responsible for, I beg of you, secure it and check it often, okay? And let me tell you why. So obviously, vagrants, squatters, illegal occupation of properties is a trend in Wichita. And people who are trying to stay alive and stay warm can be very creative, right? So they will unsecure a secured opening, hinge it so they can get in and out, and it still looks secured from the street. So just because you've done something to secure a property doesn't mean it's going to stay secure. So you need to have someone in the neighborhood or yourself who's keeping an eye on that. Right, Daniel?
Yes.
Yes. So just to plug on that, most of the fires that you will see us involved in on an emergency basis, not always, but the ones that you'll see us involved in right quick, like yesterday, for example, are when it's a vacant, unsecured house that's illegally occupied and it catches on fire for the second or third or fourth or 19th time. And then it's finally so structurally compromised that we have to bring it down right then. So that's just a little bit about fire insurance proceeds and vacant structures, because it is, like I said, it's a growing trend in our community. There's no reason to not acknowledge that and talk about some strategies to deal with it. So.
I will realize when we get into emergency condemnation, those kind of things, we already have we know what's going on with the ownership. So that kind of, there's a lot behind the scenes that the public doesn't see there that lets us know or leads us to act the way we are. What else on securing properties do you want to hit forward there? I think you hit the main.
Yeah.
things,
If
but
you
yeah.
do have a property that you are keeping secured, I would recommend that you have somebody walk around and physically pull on every door and window, because they are getting creative. They are putting hinges on boards so they can go in and out, but they're taking wire and cords and latching them from the inside. So when you come up and pull on it, it feels secure, but they're in the house. So look at the screws, make sure, I would recommend using screws. Don't use screws with Phillips heads or flat heads, something that they can just pull out a multi-tool and just back the screws out. Get some type of Torx head is what we use. It's harder to find bits for, you can get them, but they're harder to find. It's harder to back out. 3.5 inch long screws is what we use. But physically go and touch your boards and doors and windows and make sure they're secured. And if you find an opening, clear the house, make sure there's nobody in it, and re-secure it as best as possible.
Second story windows also. Don't ignore the second floor.
Yeah.
That's not even challenging.
Are you seeing that in defined in certain areas of town? Is it all over?
Pretty widespread, I'd say at this point, yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah, anywhere, you're gonna see, of course, a lot on what we tend to call Broadway corridor, in a lot of those areas. But yeah, it's gonna be any place there are vacant structures. It will not take long. So, I know we're kind of short on time, but, as the homeless population increases, we have had interactions, firefighters have had interactions with homeless folks that arrived in town, didn't know where they were, other than someone said, if you head down those streets, there's some vacant houses, you can probably find a place to get warm. That's all they did. They didn't know they were going to stop. They just know they got directed down that way. They kind of followed the crowd, for lack of a better term, and found the house. The reason the firefighters were talking to them, because the house burnt down. Because they burned the house down.
We're also seeing it in vacant listings.
Yeah.
Vacant listings.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's huge,
I'm
yeah.
100% sure on that.
The other thing, if you have a vacant house and you know it's gonna be vacant for a while, I would highly recommend you have the water turned off, because they're going in and they're turning the water on and they're leaving it on. And we're finding, we've had a few houses that the basement's been flooded. Then they've just cut copper wire or copper pipes out and
Let it rip.
just let it go. They vandalize, they use human feces and waste behind. So it's very, very important to keep your property secured. Utilities, keep those off. That helps as well.
So your question, sir?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if you would speak to kind of the expectations around maybe the time frame for homes that are boarded up that are not habitable. So I've worked with the city on some HDLP programs and houses, and we built new homes next to homes that have been boarded up for many years. What's kind of the expectation around that? And better addressing, revitalization and making homes.
And that is a great question because, yeah, you do see the differences there. There are several things that play. I'll kind of turn it to Kayleen since she oversees that.
So that is a great question. The question was, what happens with houses that are boarded up and they sit for extended periods of time? So when you see that, it's ugly as all get out, but it's not against code to have a boarded up house, right? So if we can get to the point on a structure, now, I'm not talking about fire damaged or, cars hit it or a tree fell on it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about structures that are vacant and they're just boarded up. If we can get it to that point, if we can get it to the point where it's boarded up, that is considered a compliant property for us, right? So it could be there for quite some time.
And clean. We're finding a lot of vacant properties that are boarded up. People will dump trash, tree waste, that kind of stuff on it. So if you have one of those properties, keep an eye on it to keep it clean. So if it's secured and clean, we keep on driving by.
Yeah, clean, maintained. Now, if something happens, if something changes, if it is vandalized, if it is burnt, which is the most likely scenario, then we're gonna come back and look at it again. But there has to be something to trigger us to review that property, a complaint received. Because remember, our portion of MABCD is complaint driven. Okay, so we're responding to the complaints that we receive from community members. You have the opportunities to submit those anonymously, or you can submit those with an actual account through the MABCD portal. But that's how we get our work. Imagine that your days are filled with dealing with nothing but complaints. So, but those complaints generate our caseloads and generate the to-do list for inspectors. That is what lets us know we need to go out and look again. We're not gonna go out and actively monitor properties that we board up. We're gonna rely on that complaint process to let us know if there's a problem. There's 15 of us, 15 inspectors, field inspectors, to cover the entire city of Wichita. So we're still responsive. We're not proactive quite yet. We're not staffed to do that. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah, see, the reason I'm slightly nicer than Kaylin is because I only have like 2/3 of my day that's governed by complaints. The other part is like the new construction and things like that. It's
The pretty stuff.
on that note,
It's pretty stuff.
yeah, I know we do need to hustle. I probably need to get us off the stage here, and I do want to see if you got any more questions. I do want to hit purchase of dilapidated properties while we're talking this too. So make sure, yeah, if you got it, make sure I do this right too, or if you got anything to add. So realize the house is condemned. It's got big orange stickers on it that says it's condemned by MABCD. If it's gonna go to tax sale, they know that, right? We let them know when we condemn properties and vice versa. So we communicate with those folks. We're often accused of not doing that. Not the case. We communicate very much. And the lawyer who stands up before every sale reminds everyone it is your due diligence, right? You're buying it as is, et cetera, et cetera. So that is one very important part to keep track of, to remember, is to do the due diligence on any properties that are purchased, especially if you're entering the infill area. Because I swear not a month goes by that we don't have someone end up purchasing either from the owner or at a tax sale a property that's previously been condemned, it's under condemnation. And then they come to us to go like, hey, a truckload of 2x4 paint, that should be good, right? We're like, an engineer's report to begin with. So, so there's, if you buy a house under condemnation consideration, you're probably $2,000 to $2,500 in an engineer's evaluation and some inspections and discussion with us to see if the house can be saved. And then we go from there. So please, 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 as you interact within the world of infill and development, remember and remind and educate others of that responsibility and the fact that, yes, when you buy something as is, you truly buy it as is and what comes with it. And if it has already been condemned, there's a reason for that. And it may look okay on the outside, But what was, Tim went to one that the guys, I mean, they bought it and they're they're from Colorado. And they're like, but come on, and they had a local advocate reminding us that, but look at it. Tim took him inside, for the 200 cracks in the foundation.
Oh, yeah,
Right,
they
so
looked
the
down.
foundation had literally crumbled underneath the house, so, just, yes, so. And disclosure, we had the question last year, I got, somebody said, okay, you got this situation, boom, 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 boom. That they lined up for me, and they said, what would you do in that situation? And I said, I would sue everyone involved if it was me, right? Realtors need to disclose, title companies need to disclose, or, sellers need to disclose. So if you're buying property, you request those full disclosures on anything that is going on with the property.
Okay, so being a realtor in the room,
Perfect,
okay, so we can only disclose what we know,
that's correct.
right? And I'm also not, well, way.
Yes, I know you're often at a disadvantage.
We are. So let me ask you this. So where's the city's disclosure on why the property was condemned to begin with?
And that, so we do publish those. I know it may not be easy to find with our legal publications and that to go with those. And I would say, great question, contact us, because you can do a open records request on an address. We actually field those on a very regular basis. I would say probably almost daily, we answer, Cora's or Kansas Open Records Act requests of properties, and it says just that. We get an email that says, hey, looking to purchase this property. Are there any open code violations on this property? Are there any, basically you're saying, what's in your database?
If it's already been all the way through a formal condemnation process, in other words, we're handling it not as an emergency. Both public hearings and the final action are taken by the city council by resolution. Okay, so through the city clerk's portion of wichita.gov, the city's website, you can research resolutions that are essentially condemnation related. But we can, again, the other part of this, there are handouts that look like this. We won't go into a great lot of detail, but it talks about how to access the MABCD portal. You can look up any address and see if we have cases against it. Okay, so that's a great starting point. If you see that there's cases that we have open, and it'll look like TOM or DNB or EV, Emergency Board of EBUs, DNB, Dangerous Neglected Building, that's at least telling you that you need to ask some more questions. Okay, but this is a great place to start.
And looking, because if we've actually condemned it, it will have a sticker on it. So a lot of times. just
Physically,
ensuring that folks physically look at the property before entering a deal will solve the worst of those problems.
We had I got a great story. So we had I'll speak in generalities. We had a house that we dealt with recently that had burned, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, right? It was going to be auctioned. And so I had a little moment of panic with the auction company about whether it was condemned or not, and how would they know that? And I said, well, in the pictures you put on Zillow, those big orange and yellow stickers are just right there. They're right there.
I was
They're
actually
open the door.
willing to read my signature block.
Yeah. So most people,
On my computer.
that triggers, that you need to maybe ask more questions. The big neon stickers that you can't pull off without some effort, but hey, we can go about that differently if you need more than that.
So
True story, less than 90 days ago.
does that portal show like scheduled demolitions of property as well? Because I went to an auction for the county probably 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the properties I was interested in, and luckily I was doing my due diligence and drove right by it the day
Good.
of.
Had a lot,
And
it was a lot.
getting pushed down.
Right.
The day
You were
of.
buying a lot, that's right.
So when I went to the auction, there were like 5 people bidding on it, and I stood up and I was like trying to stop it because there was no.
There's no house, right?
Yeah, nobody knew. So is there a place to look up scheduled demolition?
That is a great question, and the answer is no. Yeah, but let me tell you why. So we deal with, I hate to say bulk demolitions, but we're dealing with, in the contractor world, what's a fairly high volume. So I'll give you an example. We had scheduled demolitions we're working with a contractor on We had to pull off all of that work yesterday to say, okay, we're gonna stop all that and go here and tear this one down because it's gonna fall on the house next to it.
Right.
So it's a very fluid, it's a fluid schedule. So it's not as straightforward as it's gonna be done on Monday, you know what I mean? There's all sorts of factors that impact that, not the least of which is us pulling those contractors and saying, okay, that one's bad, but this one's worse. So you need to go over here. So that's why we don't try to publish that. But again, you can call our offices. I handle all demolitions that the city does, with the exception of what Housing and Community Services takes care of. So we can give you a pretty good glimpse on what's going on.
So what's the process? Who determines which house to be demolished?
That's a great question. The question was, who determines what houses will be demolished? Yeah. So there's two types of demolition and condemnation. So there's emergency, and then there's what we would call a regular. Okay, so you're gonna see a regular demolition on a house that has had years and years of deferred maintenance. It's decaying, it's falling in. Usually the owner's deceased or out of state, nobody's paying any attention to it. So those kinds of things, not an immediate danger, okay? So on those properties, the first step, I'm gonna hit this quick. The first step is a hearing before the Board of Code Standards and Appeals. So that's the first place.
Citizen Advisory Board.
Yep, Citizen Advisory Board. We do a complete title search ahead of time. It's reviewed by the law department. We invite the right people to attend that public hearing. Okay, that board can hear what people have to say, or oftentimes there's no one there to represent the property. They make the next step, which is refer it to city council for a public hearing. We adopt the resolution, set a public hearing. That's a real formal process to do that. There's legal notifications. The public hearing is held. The city council then takes action, which can look like extend the timeframe for compliance. It can look like move it to a 10 and 10, which is 10 days for the owner to repair or 10 days to remove. And then after 10 and 10 it elapses, they say, okay, staff, you go do your thing, right? So that can take 9 months to a year to do that correctly. Emergency demolitions, those structures usually are burned. Again, had a fire hit them, had a tree fall on them. They collapsed because of a foundation problem, whatever the case may be. We're gonna look at those. We have in-house building officials that assist with that process. If we determine that it is an immediate hazard, the owners are notified, given a very short time frame for compliance, and then those are bid for removal. Okay, so there's two kinds of property issues that we deal with on those. Did that answer your question? Okay.
And I'll go just real quick too, to kind of go back to yours, which we know that's an issue. The main thing we've done with that communication has gotten a lot better over the last several years. Because we did see that was happening. So some of that was to do with how backlogged the tax sale, sheriff's tax sale and the county register of deeds and all that was. So that has gotten a little better. And one of Caitlin's employees, works a lot of the paperwork for this, and that he always contacts them now. So our main play there has been to try to improve that communication so that they know, if they know before they list the tax sale, that it's under such an action. We probably need to, what else we got?
Well, I still got a question because I did this, like, whenever somebody has a permit pool and all of that, how long is it taking for that to get reported onto the county's website? So under the property record part,
What kind of a permit?
like, let's say we have a roofing permit that gets pulled. It's every county, like, so a lot of times we go in and look at that information to see like how old their roof is or what. Permits have been.
We just tear stuff
I
down.
know because it's the appraiser and the register of deeds that publishes that, right, as the info you're talking.
Well, yeah, and so there's.
So that, yeah, on the website, so they actually pull our data every Friday, so they pull a list of reports each week. I couldn't tell you exactly how long it's taken them right now. I know they have been backlogged. I think the normal for that is like 3 weeks, but I do believe that some things have been taking up to 5 or 6, at least during the COVID time. Hopefully they've recovered that a little. But there is a little bit of a lag there. And what I do know is the report, our data system sends a report to the appraiser's office every Friday morning with the week's permit, Friday or Monday. But anyway, it sends the appraiser's office that information. I can't tell you exactly how long it's taking right now to publish it. All right, any others? I greatly thank you for your time. Sorry that it was a little compressed based on the late start, but Just really appreciate y'all being here. Good night.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job.